Bruce Kidd, and I'm from Operational Accounting Systems. And we are, as you well know, a Pegasus reseller, and we look at different products from Pegasus. During this series of webinars that I'm currently hosting, we're looking at a different area or section or module, as we want to say, in Opera every month. So this month, I'm welcoming you to our introduction, and I'm welcoming you to the payroll and HR side of Opera 3, and more specifically the personnel module. So as you can see from screen, we'll be looking at the utilities, we'll be looking at the maintenance and the setup of those. We'll do some processing. We're looking at the benefits area, the inquiries, and as well as reporting, and we'll end with a small Q&A session at the end. So the personnel module has been designed to be used as an integral part of our payroll system. So the records we put in are held in both the payroll and the personnel module, and the user can create an employee record within either the payroll or the personnel module. It's also possible to use the payroll without personnel, in which case all the personnel menu items do not appear. But what we were looking at today, it is using both of these modules in the one system. As you can see, it's definitely used both. How does it integrate? So the personnel module automatically integrates with the Opera 3 payroll module, and as a result, you'll find that both modules share the same employee details. A new employee record created using the processing in the payroll module will result in a record being created in the personnel module similarly. In the same way, if you create a record in the personnel record, it creates a personnel only employee for you in the payroll side, at which point you'll have to do some additional bits to make it a fully blown employee in your system. So the layout and structure of the module is pretty straightforward. We have our processing area, then we have the benefits, inquiries areas, a reporting area, and we have got our utilities and our maintenance areas. So first thing I'm going to show you this morning, is the set options area. I think it's important. It's the area where we start in the module, where it holds some default settings for us, and it also decides some areas within our module, how we're going to be using them. So things like a setting of, hold on, I've just got someone joining. Sorry for that. So in our set options, one of the first things we have there is here's to keep records and here's to keep transactions. Now, mine is set to 25 years. What does this mean? It means that whenever I run processes within my personnel module, in the sense of a reorganize, for example, it will clear out records that sits without the scope of the default that I've set within the set options. So in most situations, people probably will keep it for 9 years, something like that. And that just means that your records will be kept for 9 years in the system before it clears itself down after that period when you run a reorganize within your system. You also have an hourly paid and a pro rata holiday entitlement tick boxes. The hourly paid tick box really is whether or not you are going to be using it determines whether you use hourly paid employees at all within your system. The pro rata holiday entitlement really is an option that determines whether your holiday entitlement on an employee's diary will be calculated pro rata from the jobs that apply to the months shown on the diary form. So it basically means if you apply a new job to your employee, it will prorata the holiday entitlement based around what he's already taken, what he had, and what the carryover from the previous year was. Then we're looking at the salary number and the basic pay number. The salary number identifies the payment profile within the payroll module that relates to salary payments for employees. So when you do a salary payment and it updates your payment and deduction profile, it will update the basic salary number. There's a drop-down box so you can decide what that salary number should be. Exactly in the same way for hourly paid employees, you have the basic pay number. Again, you can select from the drop-down box which pay and deduction profile you want to use for this purpose. But again, this will update the rate value against the payment profile for these hourly paid employees. Default weekly hours, we set this as the default that our employees work. When we then set job titles up later on, this will default within the job title, but we can override the job title default hours, and we can only do that when we've set a default against the set options within here. Use holiday carryover, well, pretty straightforward. Are we going to use a holiday carryover or not? What does this mean? It means that if my employee didn't take all his holiday in a holiday year, am I going to allow some of the holidays to be carried over? And in the next set box is the maximum days to carry over. If I am going to allow the holiday carry over to happen, then the maximum days I will carry over is set up here as a default. So I can override this per individual employee, but this is the default for the company. It means if someone has got 3 days left of the year and I run my carryover routine, 3 days will carry over to the next year. If someone has 8 days left for the year and I run my carryover routine, it will cap the carryover at 5 days because that is what I've set my default. The very next setting is the first holiday month, and that is pretty straightforward because the first holiday month indicates which month of the year we start our holiday year on. This is set to month 1, which is January. So the holiday year in this calendar runs from January to December, but a lot of companies have it from April to March, for example. So first holiday month would be set as number 4 because it indicates it starts in that period in time. Why is that important? Because when I run the holiday carryover, that is the period it would be looking at for the carryover, for calculating whatever the carryover values should be. So I'm going to pop over and off. We'll come back to the utilities after a moment, but I'm going to pop back into the maintenance area now. Now, in the software, the maintenance area, I'll just show you. The maintenance area is this area that sits within the in the software, and I'm just going to really look through all these different selections we can make within the software and what they all mean. So popping back to my presentation. So we're going to be looking at maintenance areas, job titles, briefly talk about employee imports. I'm looking at marital status, bank details, absence reasons, training, disciplinary, ethnic origins, department details, group details, patterns, holidays, and mention the department details for Web Exchange. So it's important to remember these areas are set up as a label effectively, which you then use throughout the personnel module to select from when you set new employees up or when you process information for these employees. So first thing area we're looking at is the first thing is the job titles. Really a label that sets out what the job is. It allocates a code. You can give it a description, and here you can set the weekly hours as a default for that job type. The list action will show you all the job types that has been set up for this. So this is then used throughout the system to select the job type when you select the job details, for example, in the action button later on. Marital status, well, it is what it is. You set these statuses up. You have the normal stuff called married, divorced, widowed, etc. And again, it's just a label, but you have to set at least one of these up, and which always will be applied to your employees. Bank details. Well, this is the area in which you set up all the sort codes for the different banks that your employees might use. It's not an area that you will go in and do anything in often. However, when a new employee starts and they have a bank that you've not already used, you will have to come in here and set up a new sort code and name the bank and all details of the bank in there, which means that when you set the bank details up for your employee at a later stage, you will be able to select the sort code from a drop-down box and just apply the account number for your employees. Obviously, for those employees, you pay by backs. We have an absence reasons area. So again, this is a command where you set a list of absence reasons, which you then would use later on in the absence command within the action button of the processing. You can select different types of absences at that point in time. Holiday, maternity, absence, and compassion are the three you'll be selecting from when you select and create a new absence for your employee from the action menu. You cannot delete an absence reason once you have associated with an employee record, which is really the same for all the areas within these maintenance areas. Training, well, pretty straightforward. You set out a list of training that your employees might or might not receive so that later on you can apply this training to them through the training command in the action button when we do process. Exactly the same for disciplinary. The reasons we might have disciplinary actions for our employees, we set up in here. And when we then record disciplinary actions, we can select from the drop-down box which one it is we're going to be using. Ethnic origins, well, you can set this up according to how your ethnicity in your company works. Again, it's a label you apply to the employee at the point in time when it's needed. Department details linked to a cost center. So these are departments, and it makes it easier for you within payroll to classify and clarify who works in which area. It also means that sometimes you can run reports for a department and get figures just for the department instead of overall, even when it's within a group like a monthly or a weekly group. You can get different department details together. Again, these are departments. You decide what your departments in your company are, and you can link them to the cost centers that's already been created for you. Group details, I think you'll all recognize these from payroll. This is the actual groups that you have within your payroll system. So it's open up for you on monthly, but of course you have weekly group, you have a 2-weekly group, you have a 4-weekly group. And each of those group details are individually set out here. So what you can see on there, you can set a password for a specific group. So if you have a monthly directors group, for example, with only 2 or 3 people that could manage that area of your payroll and personnel, you will set up a password within this label here, and whenever someone selects to use that group, they will have to put the password in to access the information behind it, leaving it a little bit more secure for only those people who can use those groups. The working patterns is really to define working patterns that determine the normal days and hours an employee would work. So once you've defined the working patterns, you use the working pattern command on the action menu associated with the personnel processing form to assign one of the patterns to the selected employee. The use of the working pattern is optional. If you define no working pattern, or for those employees which no working pattern is assigned, a default pattern applies that assumes that working days are Mondays to Fridays, excluding bank holidays. And then that is what the working pattern looks like. You set the work start and end time, the number of days in the pattern, and then how the pattern is broken down. So in this instance, it's a normal Monday to Friday working pattern. That someone works with an hour break, it comes to 40 hours, and that's their pattern. But of course, this can be over a longer period of time, or you can devise a pattern that's 4 days on, 4 days off, and just set it in here. And the effect of the pattern is seen on the diary, because it shows you that Monday to Friday is working days. Why is this important? This is important because when you calculate your statutory sick pay absences and record absences on your system, it would use the working days to decide and calculate which days are payable and which are not. And one of the last labels in here is the bank holidays. Again, this is an optional use. You set up and define the bank holidays for the year in here. And when you then look at your diary, it will indicate to you which of the days are bank holidays in the system for the employees. So I think I'm going to pop into the software, open these areas, and we'll have a quick look around them just so you can see them a little bit more live in action. So within my maintenance area, for example, one of the good things to look at, I'm going to come down here and look at the working patterns, for example. The working pattern we've looked at earlier on, you define in the list. You can see in the list, sorry, all the patterns that has been created. You might select to look at the standard week. In the action button, you'll find the details that sits behind that working pattern, and that gives you the schedule. Of course, you can overwrite it here. You can make changes to current existing schedules, but this is where you then do that for that schedule. You can also look at the preview of the diary and what it's going to look at. Incidentally, here you will notice those bank holidays that I've set before, indicated here as bank holidays on the person's calendar. Like anything else in Opera, to create a new record, you use your little icon for creating a new record here. It gives you a blank record. You can name it what you want. For example, and when it starts and whether or not people are available on a bank holiday for this. Save your record. Sorry. Save your record, and now you can detail what those working patterns are. My working pattern is a 7-day period starting 8 till, I don't know, let's say 1 o'clock, with a 30-minute break. And it's putting this into me, and it calculated that each of those days I'm going to be doing that on. I can come individually and go, no, not going to work those days, and indicate my pattern like that. Put every second day as a day off, for example, and create a brand new pattern for my employee. And let's just save that, say okay to that. Yep. And then in the preview for that pattern, I'll see how the pattern works, indicating I've no days off, as you can see, because I've basically have a 7-day pattern that is for work purposes. So that's just the effect of the pattern within my system. One of the other things I wanted to briefly mention on here was the bank details, because it's important. And this is really just where you set new bank details up for your employee when you have your bank details and you have to pay them. Again, the list will show you, I'm expecting yours to have a much bigger list, but the list will show you everything you've already set up. One thing I want to mention while we're looking at the list, and this is correct and the same for everywhere you look at the list in Opera, you'll find on the printer icon what we call a little hidden report. What the hidden report does, it will give you the information in the list as a report, and as you can see, it brings up the normal publisher, so you can email, print, whatever you need to do with it, but it gives you a list of the information, what you were looking at. And this is the same for everything else in Opera. Of course, you also have this ability to be able to copy data from here and drop it into an Excel file very quickly for you to look at the information. It's just a drop effectively of the information that we've seen in the Opera a moment ago. And I think that is basically everything I wanted to show you in here. We'll see some of these areas in action when we go through and we do some more processing. The next area I want to get into and just further investigate for a moment is the utilities areas. So firstly in utilities, after the set options and the employee import, which we'll speak about in a second, we have the reorganize. What does the reorganize do? Well, this is a command that helps you to remove data files and deleted employee records and transactions, depending on the values in the years to keep record and the years to keep transaction that we saw earlier on in the set options form. It also clears deleted table records such as job titles, absence reasons, disciplinary descriptions, departments, and so on. So all the areas and the labels we've seen, if anything has been deleted, it will clear it from there so you wouldn't see it in Opera anymore when you run the reorganize functionality. Just give me a second. I've got someone wanting to join us. There we go. The holiday carryover command really is the utility that you use to escalate that you use to calculate what the holiday carryover for your employees are going to be at the holiday year end. This is a command you only run at that point in time because it will calculate what they've taken, what you've recorded, what they have left, and how much of that they can carry over to the next year, if that is something you allow in your company, of course. So this command just helps you to do that process for everybody in one go. And basically will carry over what has been carried over to the new year for your employees. The global salary changes, again, it's exactly what it says. It's an area that you use to update the payroll salary information globally for all the employees that falls within the selections that you have made on the form. You can see you can update this by salary code, which is the basic code. And again, to mention, this is picked up from the set options. You can print a pay slip, a pay rise slip, for the employees, which means that when you've run this process, everybody will get a pay slip, a rise slip to indicate for them what increase they've had and the effect it would have on their payroll. You can select to update by values or select to update by percentage. So if everybody within a certain group of people have the same update of salary, i.e. 2.5% as an annual increase, then you can set that here. This action will do a lot of things. That will update the payroll basic value in the payments and deductions for each employee that falls within the scope of what you selected. It will suggest that you run a calculation for these effects to take change. We will also see in a moment when we look at processing where you can update a employee's salary details through the salary command within the action button. It's got the same effect as this, but done for individuals. Again, it will update the salary immediately, regardless of when it was for, when the date was for. It will go into the open current period and wants you to calculate from that point onwards. And lastly, within the utilities, we have an audit log. So what has my people, what's the employees done, which changes have been made, who made those changes, when those changes were made. Really, it's just an audit area that shows you what's happened within your system. So at this point, I'm going to pop back into my Opera for a moment, and we're going to have a quick look at these utilities. Now, I haven't said anything about the import new employees yet. I haven't, because not all of you would see this within your systems. The import new employees is an actual fact, a area we have developed that allows some of our customers to import employee records, i.e. from another database or from a HR system or anything like that, by setting a template of how you're going to import, and this area just then you point at your import file and you import the employee details. I'm not going to show you how this works, as it's a bespoke area that wouldn't affect everybody, because not everybody would want to import employees on a constant basis. The reorganized functionality really is what it is. It's pretty straightforward. You say okay to it, and it will run your process for you. Unfortunately, I've got some other areas open. You need exclusive access to that, but it will just run, remove the records, remove deleted records. It's not something that takes very long. It just keeps the system clean and clear, which is why it's part of the utilities of what you do. The holiday carryover, as I said before, first thing you get, anything payroll or personnel, is to select the group of people you're going to be looking at. I'm going to select my monthly group, and when I start this carryover, let's put the 31st of the 12th 2022 in there, because my holiday year started. I would say okay to that, and I still can't log into it. Okay, I'll leave that as that. So the holiday carryover will then run the process and give me a report of the amount of holiday that should be carried over and who it should be carried over for. And lastly, in here, I've got the global salary changer we spoke about earlier on. Again, I can select a group or several groups of people, and this would allow me to set a carryover of how I'm going to do it. This tick box here, update by value or percentage, in brackets tells you what the selection means. So at the moment it's set to value. I can set that to percentage, increase everybody who falls within the selection I've made by 2.5%, and give a reason for this, as it would be recorded, for example, and run this process. It will then suggest what it should be, increase the salaries, and run through and populate the information in the payments and deductions area. And lastly, the audit log. Really, it's just an area in here. You can select a specified range, who it's for, in here even what information had been changed, or you can leave it to all the fields like I'm going to do. And if you click refresh, you've got your information here down. Each time something has changed, who has changed it, what has changed, and the time, and which field and so on has been affected by the change. Again, you can copy this data and put it into a spreadsheet for you to look at, but it's just a good area for you to see what has happened and who has done what within the system. So after this now, we'll get hopefully a bit more exciting. We'll be looking at a bit more of the processing area, setting up an employee, looking at the areas within that, why we use them, and so on. We'll be looking at the action button mostly through this. And to start with, the action button has the snapshot groups, diary, OLE stuff, which we'll be looking at very briefly, and just see how we start processing within the system. That's the screen for personnel processing. It's an extension of our payroll side, and a lot of the information you see also is shared with payroll, as I've said before. But it's also got additional information that you wouldn't find in the payroll side, things like the mobile numbers, home telephone numbers, things like when we go into the action button, the discipline and things like training, for example, doesn't exist anywhere else in the payroll side effectively. So going back into Opera, opening my processing form, I'm just going to open the first employee in there just so I can talk through the options and processing. So like anywhere else in Opera, to create a new employee, you use the create a new record button on this side. You set a reference for the new employee. You select the group which the employee belongs for. The reason I can only select one group there is because when I opened the personnel processing form, I only opened the monthly group and not the other groups. Say okay to that, and as you can see, it just now gives me information to fill in about the person that I have the information for. I can select a department from a drop-down box, put a home phone number in, when the person is starting from me, with me, sorry, what their date of birth is, have I verified that, etc. Do I do a carryover for this person? Remember, the company has been set to 5 days. I'm just going to set this new person to 3 days. Are they hourly paid or not? What their gender are? Do they have a national insurance number and what it is? What the tax code or default tax code is that I know they're going to be on. And I can click on the save button. And immediately when I click on the save button, the system guides me to some more information that it wants me to put in. So firstly, personal information. So their address details, what it is, where they live, where I'm sending information to. Are they married? And as you can see from this now suddenly comes from the maintenance area where we had the marital status, what it is. Do they have dependents or not? I can put it in there. Do they have a maiden name or not? I can put it in there. I can record the ethnic origin of the person I'm setting up. Do they have a locker number, a badge number? Do they have an email address or a passport number? All this information is information that you can enter in here and would be shared with payroll when I get to put that up. Are they a car owner or they're going to have a company car? Is there a license number? Is that clean? Does that mean, do they have any points on it? Yes, it's clean. Do they have any points? Obviously not, because it's clean. What is the date? I checked that. Do they have an eye test? And what is the date for that? Do they have a medical test? And what is the date for that? It just allows me to then later be proactive with all my employees to pull this information out through either reports I write myself or reports in the reports section. Are they disabled, and do they have a disabled number? Are they a smoker? Save the information. It comes up with next. First, it wants some contact information. So again, now you can set your next of kin or your emergency contact details for 2 different people on here, as well as a comment section where you can do that. You also, this is where you select the bank details. So you can say the bank account, what it should be. You set up the bank account they gave you. Is there a reference number for payroll you want to appear for them? and is there a bank reference? It needs to go with it. And you can save that details. And the last form that pops up is education. You can record education records of when people were, when they attended school, what qualifications they had, what further education they had, has it been checked? What secondary education details is just the notes area, so you can put any kind of notes in here. This is all reportable, of course, at a later stage, and any further education details you want to put on there. It brings me back to my employee then in full, and what happens now is against the first areas here, I can do other things. I can do things like add a snapshot. And what does that mean? It just means that I can add a picture of the person for my records internally that I can have a look at, for example. So it then sits there. So when you look at the record, you know exactly what you're looking at, who you're looking at. The groups here is really the groups that's been set. Only one selected, only 3 selected. What does that mean? Well, it means if I say OK to that, suddenly all the list includes employees from all 3 of the groups, not just from the one group that was selected. Of course, I can come in here and I can go back to the groups and unselect everything else and just keep the weekly group, which now is just a small amount of people in that. So it's really just a way of navigating around what I'm doing. But as you can see, I've set some pictures on some of these, verified as new employees. But there is a difference. The very first one I now set up a minute ago has got this little icon here at the bottom. What does that mean? It means it's a personnel only employee. And if I go to payroll side, if I open up my payroll processing for my monthly paid employee, I will see my employee, as you can see by the picture, very immediately, but I will also notice it still has the personnel only employee. Why is that? Well, it's because I haven't applied a profile to my employee so that the system knows what he should be paid effectively. So I have to come in here, I have to select a profile against the person. I can save that profile. You immediately notice the icon disappear. I can use my F11 function and I can come in here and I can enter salary and basic details for the employee, however it is I'm going to be dealing with them. For example, that will now just be, he will now be calculated as part of the very first period in which I'm going to be paying people since he started in my employment. But I'm going to go back to my personnel employee, and that label now has disappeared because it's not a personnel only employee. It's now shared by both because I can process more on this employee than I could before. The diary action, and let me just go to someone a bit more reasonable, Mr. Godson. The diary action that sits within the processing here at the top is the diary that shows me all the absences, the sickness, etc., and the holiday pay that I have allocated to this, the bank holiday that I've allocated to this employee. So as you can see at the top, there are some compassionate leave in January 23 that's been recorded. In March, there are a week of sickness. Incidentally, that sickness was within a 56-day period. That's why there's no 3 waiting days first within it. If there is a waiting day, it's indicated by the letter W. And then the bank holidays, and of course the 3rd of June, where the B sits, is when the employee's birthday is. So it's just a calendar that shows you. What you will see is here in January, the working pattern was different to February. It's because his working pattern changed from February 2023 to a different pattern than it was. And that calendar then indicates that, because that would be important for when you take holidays or sickness, as you can see there, because the non-working days are non-working days for all purpose. And the last thing I want to mention in here is the OLE section. What is the OLE section? Well, it's basically an area where you can attach any sort of documentation, spreadsheets, information, PDF documents against the employee. So you could record, for example, things like employment contracts, scans of licenses, etc., can be recorded against this. So it's just an OLE link. It means you have to have your information still saved somewhere, but it gives access to that specific information for your specific employee much easier. So for example, if I look in the OLE here, I think I've got a picture there as well. The picture isn't there because it's in the front. It's there as well. It's just a way of accessing it. But I also have a birth certificate. So I can actually double click on that birth certificate. And what you haven't seen, it's pulled it onto my other screen, but it then gives me a picture of the birth certificate that sits against that person. I can literally just come in here. I can create a new link by using the new icon. I can select what I'm going to be picking up here. Let's pick up that, and I can give it a name and save it. And now it's there. Next time I want to access that information, I literally just come in here. I can come down to the one I want to do. I can double click it. It will show me a picture of what it is I'm busy doing with. And it's just a way of accessing information centrally within your system for your specific employees. So there you go. I think that kind of takes care of those areas. Just had a look at that. So the last area within there I want to mention probably is the company payrolling benefits. So you only record details here if you have registered to payroll company cars, because details entered on this form are automatically included in your FPS and your full payment summary. So use the company car benefits form to record company car details. Opera automatically includes these details of company cars in the FPS if they are recorded on the company car benefits form. This includes details of new cars and any changes to existing cars. For example, elements that contribute to the value, changes in fuel benefits, and so on. The cash equivalent of the benefit will also need to be added to payroll. You need to register with HMRC online before start of the tax year you want to payroll the benefit for. This started from April 2020. In its third year now. So yeah, important to know you need to register before the year for which you want the benefit to be calculated for. To record the cash equivalent of the benefit, you use the payment profile with a type of benefit in kind for recording the information on your system. That was the last item within my action button here under payrolling benefits, company car benefits that I wanted to look at. So employee has left, doesn't really matter. Let's just look at King Charles. So company benefit, basically what it says is we record the company car benefit for the employee because it would affect his information. It's included in the FPS when you run your FPS on a monthly basis to HMRC, and the cash equivalent value here is what the benefit would be worked out on. And for that, you have to have a payment profile that has been set as a type of benefit in kind, because that way the system will then calculate it correctly for the employee. So it's just a place where you put the information on so that the FPS informs HMRC of the benefits for your employee. So next area really is the further actions that we see within our system. So we've got the absence, the SSP absence, training, discipline, job salary, working patterns, and levers. And I'm going to briefly run through each of these areas so that you can see why you should or would be effectively using them. So firstly, the absence. You use the absence, to record absenteeism for individuals in the personnel system. You can view this information later on in the employee's diary, as well as using the inquiries command, which we'll look at in a later point, to view the absences. Absences have got certain categories like sickness, holiday, maternity, absence, and compassion. Although a facility to record absence is provided in the payroll module, you should always use the personnel module to record absence records, because the absence in the payroll, is only for when no personnel module is in use. Where the full SSP processing option is selected in the payroll module, sickness absences must be entered using the SSP absence, which we will look at next to this. So in Opera, let's open King Charles and look at the absence record. So really an area where I just create a new absence every time an absence is there. I record the from and to dates. It tells me how many days there are. If I use half days, if that half day is at the start or at the end of a period, what reason has been given. Again, important to remember, the reason is set up by us in maintenance. One of the reasons, absence reasons there. So you just really select from it here, and then it puts the information, each absence individually on the bottom line for you to look at a later stage. But more importantly, recording the absence on the system for the employee for whichever reason it is. The SSP absence command that sits in here is where I can record statutory sick pay, and I have to do it through this SSP absence command if full use of SSP absence is in play. I can also do this within the payroll module, but this is obviously in personnel, and I get to record sicknesses on here. So firstly, I can come in here, I will see any sicknesses that's already been recorded. I can add to that sickness, I can take away from that sickness, or I can add a brand new sickness event within the calendar. I could potentially just add onto this one because employee was sick for a week. He then said, I can't come back because I'm still sick. I can actually highlight my time. I can create a new absence using F9. It asks me, do I want to add it to the previous absence? I go, yes, definitely, please. It now has the from and to date based on the from and the to date in there. It tells me that I'm the person who was told about the absence. I was told by text. Was there a certificate, yes or no? And I've overwritten the average pay here. And the only reason I've done that is because this employee is newish to me. And if I didn't do that, he wouldn't be entitled to get any pay because I have no calculation for him yet. But I can do that to trick my system so I can show you how this works. So as you can see, I've just gone through, added that all, and what happens in my system now immediately it puts the S, which is SSP payable, onto the calendar, and the system recognizes that out of that 2-week period, I had 3 working days, 3 waiting days. It's a new sickness for the employee, and then the payment days start after that. If I now do my calculation within my payroll side, it will calculate sick pay for that period of time. But here I can record it because the person recording is not in charge of any payment elements, just the fact that this person has been on sick for that period of time. The training area here is pretty straightforward. I come in here, I select what kind of training the person has had. Okay. So he's been on a training for 2.5 days. The half day was the first day of the training. Who was the supplier of this? What the venue was there a cost involved for the training, when the next review date for training would be, and what the result was. And what the result was. For example, comes there in the bottom, and this is now just recorded as a training record. And as you can see, over a period of time, you will build up very nicely what an employee has trained through your organization, and what the costs were, what the dates were, and what the reviews were. So you can then record and report on review dates to know what needs to happen next at the right point in time on your system. The next thing down is discipline. Well, it is what it is. There's no real action here apart from labeling the discipline actions that has happened for a specific employee. Let me find someone I know that's been really naughty in the past, and let's just have a look and see if there's some information here. So yeah, Mr. Godson had the timekeeping issue, and people got so fed up that eventually I had a verbal warning for that quite recently. There's a review date on the verbal warning. What are we going to do? And here we can also set whether these disciplinary actions has been reviewed and has been completed. So I can obviously report on all of this within Opera, but here I can come and say that's now been completed. We've sorted the problem. He's not been late again, and going forward, that's not a problem. All disciplinary actions has been dealt with for Mr. Godson. Just really recording the information on there. Of course, I can report on all of this later on. Job details is really the label of what is the job you do, what is the daily rate and holiday entitlement of the job that you do, and the daily rate is used to calculate the value of absenteeism when an employee is on holiday. It doesn't put it anywhere in the system, but it will calculate for you what the cost of an employee's absenteeism was for a period of time if they off sick. And again, something you can record on. And as you can see, you record each time a person changes a job or a job title. It's when you come in here and you would set a new set of jobs up for them. So as you can see, this Mr. Godson I'm on was managing director up to the 28th of the second of April 2022, and from the 29th he was just the director within the administration area. But I can come in here, I can say, okay, they got so fed up with him after a while that he only made it to the 31st of May 2022 on that job. I'm going to save that, and I'm going to create a new job from that now just makes him a manager on the 1st of the 6th 2022, and it's still open because he's in there, and we've actually moved his department to valet team. Yep, he's got a supervisor, that's me. when a review date was, when the next time we review, who the reviewer was, etc. And just some information being set up there. So you can see a progression of job details for the employee that I'm recording it for. One of the important areas in here is the salary. The reason this is important because when I record the salary details here, it will update the information against the payroll payment and deduction screen for the basic pay that's been set against the set options in the utilities. So I can create a new job details here. I don't know, let's just do a quick bonus increase. The old salary was 90%. Let's change that by 10%. It's going to be 99. I'm going to review this on the 5th of the 3rd. And it would now put that in there for me. If I say OK to that, it will tell me run the calculator to affect the change in this period's payroll. Why is it telling me that? Because this information, the 99,000 will be taken, divided by 12 and put against the permanent value against the salary for this employee. I'm going to say OK to that because obviously if I want to update his salary, I would have to go and do that. And that's fine. Working patterns, again, this is just really recording the different working patterns that people have in my organization. So if someone goes from days to nights, or from weekends to weeks, or from 4 days on to 4 days on and 4 days off to 2 days on and 2 days off, this is where you might want to change the working pattern and apply a new pattern for them from a starting point when the pattern starts. When you then look at the diary for the employee, that would have changed. The pattern changes for whenever that would be relevant for. So again, just create a new record here. The working pattern, as we have set out earlier on in the maintenance area, is from a night shift. It starts on the, I don't know, let's start on the 10th of the 2nd. That's fine, just do that. And then it would have my pattern in there and when it started. And this just pulls up how I change these patterns for my employees. And the last thing I wanted to mention in here, down here, is the levers. We've literally looked at almost everything now as the levers area. And that is just an indication of whether this person is leaving this period, what the leave date for them was, what the period relating to the leave is for. Or a period has an employee has already left, which means they are not getting any more pay. So it's just a recording of information of a leaver. A reinstate leaver is a functionality you can use to reinstate someone who's worked at you. I want to warn and say probably if that person hasn't worked somewhere else in the meantime. So if someone comes back to you and they haven't worked anywhere else, this would be an option to use. Otherwise, there might be some tax implications if you don't do it that way. And the access to remove an employee from file. Someone you might not have paid, or if you want to get rid of someone, that would be a way to do that. But the leave of this period, if I say that, it then records information on the system so that when I run my processes, it recognizes I need to create a P45 for this employee because they've left. I'm not going to mark him as a leaver at this point in time. So let's just get back to the different areas we've looked at in processing now. We've looked at the training area. We've looked at the discipline area and the information you'd be recording in there. We'd looked at the job area and again, the information you would be recording on the job area for your employee and how that would change over a period of time. We looked at the salary details and how you change the salary and how that affect the payroll should the label fit. And then we also looked at the working patterns and where you apply those to your employees and what the effect of those working patterns would be on the employees. And lastly, we looked at the levers area and what you use that for when someone leaves and how you reinstate a new lever. Next thing I'm going to glance over really quickly is the benefits area, because the benefits area is for you to record benefits relating to your employee in the system that doesn't do any calculations for you. It mimics effectively information that goes on the P11D, but it doesn't produce a P11D. So this really is just for recording purpose. I'm going to pop back into mine just to show you what I mean by that. So I'm going to open the benefits for monthly paid employees. It opens up my, let me just make it normal size. So yeah, that's fine. It opens up my normal list with all my employees in here. I can go to any of my employees, and through the information, I can actually see if anything has been saved and then. So for example, I'm currently looking at Charles King, and Charles King has got a car from me as a benefit that's probably going to appear on P11D. I've just recorded information on here. The payroll or the personnel is not going to do anything with it. Nothing is going to be calculated. It's not going to do a tax or anything like that on these benefits, but it records it for you and it mimics what you do on the P11D. So if you do have P11D software, you probably wouldn't want to be doing this anyway on here, but it's an area for you to record all the kinds of benefits that you might get mimicked on the P11D form. The next thing to briefly look at in here after benefits is the inquiries. Now, the inquiries, well, it is what it is. It's exactly what it is. It's the inquiries. Now, when I open that, and I've going back to my software, if I click on my inquiries, I get my groups as I do normally, and I open up my stuff as I get normally. As you would see, the personnel inquiries form really is exactly the same as the personnel processing form. However, the major difference is everything is grayed out. It's an inquiry form. It's inquiry in the sense of training. I can't create a new record. I can't add or edit anything. It's inquiry in the sense of a job. So again, I can look at information for different employees on here. It's all about inquiry. I don't actually record anything here or create any new records in this area. So this is where people look around and find information and search for stuff. As you can see, exactly the same layout. Now, publishing a report in Opera. Everybody now knows what the publisher looks like. And also just want to remind you that whenever you see the list view, you have the ability to right click on the top of the screen and copy the data and drop it into an Excel sheet. You also have the ability to select the printer icon so that you can run a PDF report of the list view you are looking at. And then, of course, within our personnel area, we've got reports. And there's a whole host of reports that the system has as standard. It covers every aspect of the maintenance and utilities that we've seen as a report. So firstly, the list of reports, we have an absence report. Well, pretty straightforward, gives us the absences we've recorded. The training, discipline, job details, salary details, gives us all the details we've recorded within the system. Pardon me. The employee list, the new starters list, well, it's a list of new employees or a list of employees that I have. The levers report, everything has been marked as levers for the range I run it for. Labels, working patterns, the benefits, and personnel company car benefits. So all the areas we've looked at really just for reporting purposes. First thing, I'm just really going to show you what the selection screen of each of these reports look like, because they're all pretty much the same thing. You get a sequence, you get a report type. Do I want to see detail or a summary? How do I want to group it? Do I want to include people that's left or not? Is there a range I want to look at? Is there a date range I want to look at? And then, of course, the transactions I want to find within the absence report. Those 5 ones you see in there, you'll recognize from the drop-down box when you create a new absence. It will, that's what it defaults to. Training, well, exactly the same. We've got a sequence, a report style, reported detail or summary, what range it is, whether we include levers or not, and that kind of information. And as you can see, going through these, the discipline report, pretty much the same kind of selection screen, the job details, the salary details, and the employee list. Basically, all these reports have got the same kind of selection options for you to select what it is you want to see, especially the sequence. It's something that a lot of our customers use to output these reports. So I'm going to run into Opera and we'll run through some of these reports just so you get a good feel of how they work, and then we should be almost finished. So I'm going to start with a pretty straightforward one, a training record. So let's include all our groups in this report because I want to see all training records. I want to see it by group because I've got all the groups. I want to see all the groups in there. I want to see a summary rather than a detail. But more importantly, I think I want to look at this for 13 months as a whole. And yes, let me include levers to see what's happened. When I run the report, it brings up my publisher. In some of these reports, you'll be able to run it to Excel directly by selecting the drop-down box there. I'm just going to go back to the screen and run the report. So it will then give me everything I've recorded within that period of time with the parameters set here at the top, and give me an information of what I've run. That might be in Excel, like I said, or straightforward. An employee list, I don't know, let's just look at a 2 weekly employee group for this one. I want a full list of employees. Yeah, give me some detailed information, include the levers, and see all the information. So really, again, as you can see this time around, it's just the employer report. It's a detailed one, so it's giving me almost all the employees' details in the sense of contact details from the personnel, everything I've recorded against them effectively. A page per employee almost is what I'm getting here, and basically just brings together everything we've done so far. And then the last one on here I'm going to run might be the levers report. Again, it's just a report that shows me all the levers I've recorded in a period of time that I've set, what the leave dates were, etc., for me to use within the system. So I think it's fair to say that is literally the whole module we've looked at and covered all areas. So I definitely know